U.S. Vice President JD Vance has called for more patience amid concerns over the Gaza ceasefire. Its stability has been in doubt since the weekend when Israel carried out deadly airstrikes and accused Hamas militants of attacking its troops. Vance is in Israel for talks with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in a bid to shore up support for the U.S.-backed ceasefire deal. Speaking to the press, Vance pointed out that the peace plan has set no deadline for disarming Hamas. Ahead of today's talk, the U.S. Vice President praised the truce despite the uncertainties.
What we've seen the past week gives me great optimism the ceasefire is going to hold. And if we get from where we were a week ago to a long-term, durable peace between Israel and Gaza, there are going to be hills and valleys. There are going to be moments where it looks like things aren't going particularly well. But given that, and given the history of conflict, I think that everybody should be proud of where we are today. It's going to require constant effort. It's going to require constant monitoring and supervision. That's part of the reason that Admiral Cooper and his team is here, is to mediate these disputes, to mediate these disagreements as they come up. But look, right now, I feel very optimistic. Can I say with 100% certainty that it's going to work? No. But you don't do difficult things by only doing what's 100% certain. You do difficult things by trying, and that's what the President of the United States has asked us to do.
Hans-Jakob Schindler joins me now. He's an expert on terrorism and diplomacy and the senior director of nonprofit organization the Counter Extremism Project. Hans, the U.S. Vice President and his boss as well seem pretty confident that the ceasefire is going to hold. Do you share that optimism?
Look, this is a very difficult process. I think the impression that this is now a done deal and only technical steps need to be implemented was wrong. Only the very first stage of the process, the exchange of hostages against the prisoners and a defined withdrawal of the Israeli forces from a part of Gaza Strip was really negotiated into detail. Now, the second step, the future of Gaza, how is it administered, how is it secured, and how is Hamas disarmed and is Hamas willing to disarm? That is now an ongoing negotiation process. So, yeah, there is grounds for optimism because the international coalition, both on keeping Israel, but in particular also keeping Hamas on track with the general ideas of the plan, is strong. But there, of course, are no guarantees.
Before we look at how we can get there, I want to take a look at the violence we've been seeing in Gaza in recent days, including Israeli strikes. Is that normal in a situation like this?
In a very complex situation like this is absolutely what has to be expected. And I don't think this was the last episode where we saw partial setbacks or delays in the process. It's really important to understand this is not two governments negotiating with each other. This is a government negotiating with an Islamist terror organization who, at the time being right now, is not willing to give up real power in Gaza, but simply willing to hand over administrative functions in Gaza. So it is going to be difficult. Hamas is trying to provoke Israel, create leverage with Israel by further delaying the release of the rest of the hostages or by having attacks on Israeli forces and then subsequently claiming they had nothing to do with it.
Mm-hmm. Do you get the sense that the U.S. is willing to put more pressure on the warring parties to make sure the ceasefire holds?
At the moment, it still looks like this. So not only Steve Witkoff and Mr. Kushner went to Israel, so the actual negotiators, but the Vice President of the United States went to Israel to give this whole thing more political weight. So the U.S. administration is as involved at this point as it can be, but this is going to take a very, very long time, even to get to all of the details agreed in the second phase, including the Gaza Stabilization Force, where we still don't really have any details on how that's supposed to be composed and what's supposed to be done in order to get that into Gaza. So it's going to take a long time, and it will require a long-term, quite serious commitments of all the guarantor states, including the U.S. administration, but also continued willingness of Qatar, Egypt, and in particular Turkey to put pressure on Hamas to keep moving forward.
You keep raising Hamas, but of course there's also factions in the Israeli government that are not big fans of this ceasefire. So tell me, what tools do the guarantors of the ceasefire deal have to ensure it can hold, looking at both parties involved, of course?
Look, on the Israeli side, the US is really an extremely important ally for Israel. And as we've seen repeatedly over the last couple of weeks, the US administration, in particular President Trump, can move Israel. Of course, there is Ben Gvir and Smotrich within the government who are not on board with that deal. But it looks, at least for the moment, that Netanyahu, Prime Minister Netanyahu, is calling their bluff. Are they in the government in order to rebuild the Israeli political system as they intended to do prior to October 7, 2023? Or are they in government to resettle Gaza? And at the moment, those two ministers, apart from strong words, have not left the government. So finally, Prime Minister Netanyahu seems to be calling their bluff.
That's Hans-Jakob Schindler, Senior Director of the Counter-Extremism Project. Thank you so much.
Thank you.